All right, so now we're going to look at the first type of attack I'm going to be talking about tonight, which I've kind of termed them tip slashes rather than cuts, just to sort of distinguish them. So with Cain, there are different ways to attack depending on different manuals. This is the less common method of attack, but I also find it the more useful for Sabre because it's much more similar to a cut in the British Sabre system. But the idea is basically you're doing just a quick slash with a tip. One of the sources I've worked from, by a guy named Renaud, he talks about this as kind of an alternative to thrust. He says most thrusts with the cane end up being kind of tip slashes, just as a way of doing quick attacks. Then Andre, who's a later author, outright says, you know, this is a better way to attack because it's quicker, and sure, it's a bit less powerful, but still does damage. And it's, still does damage, but you're not at risk of being counter hit, and you've got, a very quick attack that's likely to land. Although Andre is also he takes a lot more of his ideas from boxing rather than from fencing, and so he sort of thinks of these attacks as more like a punch, where it does a bit of damage, but it's going to take like a particularly hard hit to actually drop someone. Whereas the earlier authors tend to think of the stick more like it's a sword, where they expect a blow from the weapon to debilitate someone, and so they tend to favour much larger blows, which I will talk about later down the track. All right. So from our guard, what I want you to do is just start by bouncing the stick in your hand. Having a loose grip and then accelerating is quite important to generating power. And we're just going to do the first one, which I'm going to term cut number one. I am going to use a lot of terms that come from British Sabre, just because that's what I'm most familiar with, and it makes sense to me, and will hopefully make sense to you as well. But cut number one, all I do is I extend out to here. I let my tip lifts all the way up. In an ideal world, when you extend, your tip won't move backwards. Your hand will just move forwards while your tip stays stationary. In a practical world, you're probably going to move your tip back a little bit. And then all I do is I punch forward. So come to position, punch. Don't think of this as slash. This is a punch in the same way as, if I'm boxing, I'm delivering a jab, and then I let the tip whip forward at the last minute. So, just a bit. And then come straight back. And the retraction is also quite important to get that little bit of power right at the end. So, cut one, turn to the angle of cut one, which is this sort of 45-degree angle, punch forward, and then whip my tip out and whip it back. So let's practice that a few times. So I'm just going to call out the number. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. All right. So let's look at cut two. So same basic idea. I'll move to the position of cut two, which my hand is already in. So the hand position of tierce, which is this sort of 45 degrees inwards facing position, or pointing with my thumb position, is also the same hand position as cut one. So, or for cut two, sorry. So all I do with this is I extend my hand out in a punch and whip my tip at the end. So let's just practice that again. So, and remember, think sort of punch and whip. Very, very important motion. All right. So you ready? And 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. And something you can do also to practice is if you have like a boxing bag at home, is you can just whack your boxing bag as a way of sort of gauging how much force you're generating. All right, so let's look at the third sort of, I'm going to keep calling them tip slashes just so you get the sense of, to distinguish them from other kinds of cuts with the cane. This is cut number 7. This is direct vertical cut, so done to the head. So all I do is I move my hand basically straight onto the center line. I let my tip drift up, so it's sitting, very, very high, like above my opponent's head. I'll bring it down. I bring it down as I punch them. So 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, and 7. All right. So these are your 3 basic tip slashes. Generally, when you're fighting with a cane, these are going to be quick. These are usually going to be your opening attacks. So there might be a quick attack to the opponent's hand if they've got an extended guard, or a quick whip to the face. Think of them as kind of like a jab in boxing in a way. It's, it's a quick kind of range-finding attack to open up a salvo. The other thing as well, to kind of keep this boxing analogy going, which is something that Renaud does, where he says, you want to deliver multiple attacks. You can't expect just one attack to defeat your opponent. So you might hit, twice, or, like even use this as a way of setting up a really big blow. So now we're going to make it a little bit more complicated. What I'm going to do is do this on a lunge. So the lunges in cane are different to the lunges in fencing for the most part. Certainly with the tip slashes, they're very, very short. They'd be called like half lunges or demi lunges in 19th century fencing terminology, and they're probably a bit more similar to kind of the drop steps, like trigger steps that you see in boxing from the same period than they are to say a foil lunge. So all we do with this is we extend out, and as we start to extend, we just lift our foot up and drive forward, doing a very short step so that our foot and our cane hit at the same time. So this is very, very quick kind of step. Right. So what we're just going to do, let's just do it with any cut you like. I'm going to use a lot of cut number 7s because I find that the most intuitive. And so what you do is extend, lift, lunge, retract. Extend, lift, lunge, retract. And you'll notice that when I lift, I'm basically dropping forward. So as I extend, I start to bring my shoulder forward so my weight is over my forward foot. And then just lifting it is what gives me that impetus to sort of fire forward. So extend, lunge, retract. Extend, lunge, retract. And I know it's a bit stilted when you see me doing it in parts, but when you bring it together and make it a lot more smooth, it's this very, very rapid kind of quick attack. Bang. So let's just do, a few more by numbers, and then we're going to try them out as a single movement. So extend, lunge, retract. Extend, lunge, retract. Extend, lunge, retract. And remember, you need to extend first. If I come firing forward at my opponent without giving them a threat, they might stick their cane in my face, and my lunge will have given them the power they need to, to injure me. So I want to get that threat out there so my opponent is responding to that before I start, lunging. So extend, lunge, retract. Extend, lunge, retract. Extend, lunge, retract. Extend, lunge, retract. All right. So now let's try this as one kind of quick big motion. So I'm just going to call lunge, and I want you to lunge. So lunge, 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 and lunge. All right. So that's tip slashes and using sort of a quick kind of snappy cut. And we'll talk a little bit more about how these kind of work tactically within the system in a bit. But for now, are there any questions? That's looking like a no, which is good. All right, so I'm just going to stop recording for a sec.